folks, right here in our own backyard, our own piece of Hollywood. If you look behind me, you'll see all the cameras and crews setting up for the Powerpuff Girl movie.
(1989). Disney strikes gold with the beginning of their Renaissance era, leading them to make 10 films and rake up hundreds of millions of dollars while in the process. This coming after a sudden loss of faith in theatrical animation and Disney as a brand. But the success of this new era would change everything. It didn't just open doors for themselves, but completely blew it off its hinges for their competition as well. So after establishing characters of their own and making them household names, Nickelodeon execs had a completely original idea. Jump to 1998, and Nickelodeon's first animated movie would be a huge hit and break box office records, becoming the first non-Disney animated movie to hit $100 million at the domestic box office, despite having a drastically lower budget than your average Disney film. Which of course led to the spamming of sequels and milking of other animated series in hopes for the same result, which they'd never get, by the way. Then enters Cartoon Network, who after seeing the success of the Rugrats movie and Nickelodeon's ability to make a profit almost on name recognition alone, every studio in Hollywood would try their hand at the exact same formula. But unlike every other studio, Cartoon Network had already built a catalog of characters that people enjoyed, like Johnny Bravo or Dexter's Laboratory. But the Cartoon Network believed themselves to have something bigger. They had a franchise that could directly compete with the Rugrats. They had what they truly believed could be their ticket to box office success. They had the Powerpuff Girls. Success that could open up their own set of doors and lead to them making sequels and profiting off of other cartoon adaptations. So they lead with their best foot and attempt to start the beginning of the network's theatrical era. But they realized rather quickly that it takes more than just a name brand and a little copying off of Nickelodeon's homework to equate to box office success. Which pretty much means it flopped. And hard.
Alright, baby!
And with the failure of a movie starring the network's most popular characters at the time, something that the network was certain was going to be an absolute hit, this would start the network's theatrical insecurities. Coming directly after the faceplant that was Powerpuff Girls the movie, the network still seemed to have hope. Things were looking bad, but maybe they could salvage this further down the road. They just need the perfect guy to lead the perfect franchise. And they find exactly what they're looking for in the great bald wonder himself.
If you smell what the rock is cooking.
On some random day in October of 2002, just a few months after the Powerpuff Girls movie had ended its theatrical run, Cartoon Network would officially announce a live-action Johnny Bravo movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, since this was 2002, The Rock wasn't the movie star that we knew today. He was far more known for his wrestling, specifically his work on the mic and ability to cut a promo. That, along with his signature look, was probably enough to give him the job, but unfortunately, that's about all that came to formation. Even though Warner Brothers had already secured the rights to the film, they were going through some issues with another live-action film based off a cartoon series at the time. 2002's Scooby-Doo movie was in production at the time with director James Gunn attached. The film was originally supposed to be PG-13, but Warner Brothers got cold feet midway through production, leading to James having to make changes to the script in the middle of filming. This meant extra attention had to be given towards Scooby, while Johnny would be temporarily placed on the back burner, at least until Scooby was done with production. Now this part is just speculation, but it makes sense to me, so I'm gonna include it anyways. Johnny Bravo was announced in 2002, which meant it probably would have started filming in 2003 and been released in 2004. But Scooby-Doo would release into theaters and was not critically, but financially a hit, making $275.7 million on a budget of $84 million. which meant that instead of dusting off Johnny Bravo's draft, which is still sitting on a shelf, they'd take the safest choice and make a sequel to the movie that's actually making them money. Instead of every live action movie based on a cartoon that was consistently losing money for studios up until that point, chances are the Johnny Bravo movie would have felt just as similar to the movies that came before it. After all, Johnny is just a grown man living with his mom, and he definitely didn't have the luxury of a giant mystery-solving talking dog that would help sell tickets.
Hey, baby, I'd ask you to come back to my place, but you're already here.
Oh, Johnny, look who's moving back into the neighborhood, your old childhood buddy, Stinky Brownstein.
Stinky Brownstein!
Hi, Johnny.
Hey, you! Cooties, get the soap!
What in the blue hell is wrong with you?
After the Scooby-Doo movie franchise started to die down, Johnny Bravo, along with all of the original Cartoon Network shows, were on their way out. It was the start of a new era. The network was jam-packed with cartoons that hadn't yet made a name for themselves. At least not a big enough name to warrant the network taking another risk on a theatrical venture. But Cartoon Network was already planning to head back to the movies. While yes, the network was in a completely new era at the time, they were still dragging around the corpse of Ed, Edd and Eddy well into the late 2000s. But originally, the series was going to end on a much bigger scale, with Ed, Edd and Eddy's Big Picture Show being a theatrically released movie. And that's pretty much all we knew about that before it was scrapped, but the film was originally intended for theatrical release. Whether it would have been the exact same movie, but just on the big screen or not, is completely unknown. But some speculate that there could have been differences due to the series creator Danny Antonucci originally saying that he'd reveal what was under Double D's hat in the movie, which he clearly did not do.
Everybody always wants to know what's underneath Double D's hat, but you know what? You ain't gonna find out until we do the feature. So write the card, tell them you want a feature, and we'll do it. We'll show you what's underneath Double D's hat, and believe me, you won't be the same.
And as for why it wasn't released theatrically, besides the whole Powerpuff shabackle, my best guess would be that it just didn't make any sense. If it was going to be anything like the film we got, then I don't think audiences outside of the series would have understood a thing. This would have been a lot of people's introduction to the series that was already ending. Ed, Edd and Eddy was already on its last legs, and this wasn't an origin story like the Powerpuff Girls movie. So I'm assuming Cartoon Network made the decision to go back on those plans and let the already established fans get to enjoy the movie at home. And with yet another Cartoon Network movie planned and then thrown out, Cartoon Network had yet another film announcement. Just months after releasing Ed, Edd and Eddy's Big Picture Show as a straight-to-TV movie, November of 2009 came and Cartoon Network officially announced, wait for it, J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot Productions would be working on a live-action Samurai Jack movie. A freaking Samurai Jack movie, which lends itself perfectly to being in theaters. The scale of a coup alone is enough to convince me. And announcing that it would be made by J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot Productions really sealed the deal for me. This one was actually going to happen. Or so we thought. Because 2009 came and went and no more news. Then 2010, still no updates, but that's okay because 2011 came around. Nothing. Like, actually nothing. No officially castings made, no concept art, posters, release dates, nothing. Just silence. And then reality was starting to set in for most people. And 2012 came around and the news hit us like a ton of bricks. That rat bastard J.J. Abrams pulled out of the film so he could go direct Star Trek Into the Darkness. If you're a Star Trek fan, that's cool, but I mean, this is like the 30th Star Trek movie. Just make the Samurai Jack movie and then make the Star Trek movie in the next, 2-3 years? I mean, I would say that, but most of the Star Trek fan base would probably be dead by then, so I guess he had to go for it now. All of that potential was just thrown out of the window. But on the bright side, that time it wasn't Cartoon Network shutting down the project. And I suppose Samurai Jack eventually got an ending, though quality may vary. This is one I still believe could happen now. Anyways, about 2 years after the announcement of Samurai Jack's film, Cartoon Network had yet another announcement. Are you starting to see the theme here? Because I definitely am, and I wrote the script, so of course I know what's coming next, but let's just say on June 14th of 2011, Matrix producer Joel Silver, along with Warner Brothers and Dark Castle Entertainment, announced a live-action Ben 10 film soon to be released.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Now this had nothing to do with the two live-action Ben 10 films that came out before, Ben 10 Race Against Time and Ben 10 Alien Swarm, which are two movies that are hilariously different in quality. That is actually insane. Ben 10 Race Against Time looks like a bargain bin thrift store find with the budget of an OG Bible Man story. Only the real ones remember. And Alien Swarm actually looks like it was made for the CW. Matter of fact, it looks better than a lot of the CW shows. But I suppose those films are a topic for another day. Either way, this new, at the time, Ben 10 film had nothing to do with those and was going to be a completely new take on the franchise. 6 months after the initial announcement, the studio announced Albert Torres as the film's screenwriter. His filmography includes hits like Henry Poole is Here, 1998's Very Bad Things, The Baker and the Beauty, and 2018's Falling Water, a true classic. Okay, at first glance I had no clue what any of those are, but this was only a good sign. Things were starting to move further into development. News would be slow for a little while, and not many updates made it to the public, but eventually, about a year and 1 month later, we received more good news, surprisingly. They were getting Ryan Eagle, who's now known for Rampage, you know, the movie about the giant monkey destroying skyscrapers, to revise Torres' script. Along with Andrew Rona, Steve Richards, and Joel Silver being set to produce. Cartoon Network even ran advertisements on the channel itself promoting the new feature film, which is sort of unheard of because it hadn't even started filming.
And a full-length theatrical feature from Joel Silver, the producer of The Matrix. More aliens, more adventures, more Ben. Ben 10 Omniverse. Coming soon from Cartoon Network.
But like everything else on this list, it didn't matter, because years would go by with no further developments or updates, and fans knew that they had already been blueballed yet again. The movie wasn't happening. It was never officially canceled, but enough years go by and you eventually start to accept the truth. But if that wasn't bad enough, 8 years later, HBO Max and Warner announced that they were going to be reworking the script in hopes of making it a series on their then upcoming streaming service, HBO Max. I wonder who's to blame for that not happening. Okay, that's a joke. I'm not sure if Zaslav had anything to do with this, but this Ben 10 script was once a movie that ended up getting canceled, just to turn into a streaming series that ended up getting canceled. I would say I'm upset, but then I go back and look at Race Against Time and, you know what? Why even try to compete with a masterpiece like this?
And you were just leaving.
And then that leads me to the final theatrical movie that Cartoon Network had planned, and it was none other than Adventure Time. February of 2015, Cartoon Network along with Warner Brothers stated that there was a possibility, remember that, possibility of a new Adventure Time movie that would be in direct continuity with the series. I can only assume this was going to be animated as the original cast was set to return. I mean, I would be down to see Tom Kenny in an Ice King suit though, I ain't gonna lie to you. I'd pay real money for that. Get me a pair of binoculars and a bottle of oil and we can get down to it, you feel me?
You're too good for this world.
But it seemed like Cartoon Network had learned their lesson about making announcements that aren't set in stone, because it just usually ends up leading in disappointment. So this time they make it very clear that this was only a possibility, and while it didn't end up happening and there weren't any further updates that I can find, I did come across this very interesting list of guest cast members on the official wiki page. I have no clue where they got any of this information. For all I know, someone went on the wiki and just started typing things out. But I'll read it. I'll read it all out for your entertainment. It could be true, but take it with a grain of salt, please. Okay, the guest stars would have been Nicolas Cage as Kingman, Elizabeth Banks as Betty, Charlie Day as Lemongrab, James Gordon as Fern, Chris Pratt as Gumbald, Zendaya as the Music Hole, Danny DeVito as Gulb, Gina Rodriguez as Aunt Lolly, LeBron James as Margles, Sean Giabroni as Shermie, and Willow Smith as Beth the Pup Princess. I have no clue where the heck they found any of this information, or if any of this is true, which it probably isn't, but I would have loved to see all of this. This sounds so freaking ridiculous that you just, oh my gosh, I would have loved to sit in that theater and just see what this could have been. Willow Smith alone is enough reason to have me to go see this. I love her, but this just doesn't really make any sense at all to me. Either way, it doesn't matter because it didn't happen, but it is pretty cool to think about. Though the Adventure Time movie, like many other Adventure Time projects, never got out of the pre-production stages, as we wouldn't really hear much else real news. But I feel like fans knew this one wasn't going to happen, especially with the way they unconvincingly announced it, saying that it possibly could happen. But I do think it's rather interesting to think about what could have been. Even if the disappointing realization of none of these movies ever happening is rather unfortunate, it's still cool to know that some of these really weird ideas were conceptualized to begin with. So where does that leave Cartoon Network's theatrical status? Well, after the 5 cancellations we already discussed, Cartoon Network did end up returning to theaters. This time with Teen Titans Go to the Movies, which was critically acclaimed and made a little profit, at least enough to justify the network making it. That was in 2018, and we've yet to see if Teen Titans gave the network enough confidence to try their hand at theatrical movies, or if Teen Titans would be their last hurrah. But either way, while Cartoon Network may never live up to Nickelodeon or Disney's film catalog, they've made their true impact through television, and still continue to do so. I know Warner is in a rough state right now, and there are a lot of people who despise Warner's CEO and everything he's achieved in the short amount of time he's been at the company, while there are others who surprisingly defend him and appreciate his efforts with the company. Either way, while I could ramble about all that has been canceled and removed and what not, for now, I'd rather remind everyone about what's on the horizon. We're getting a return of the Amazing World of Gumball. Regular show is coming back, and we are finally getting that Adventure Time movie, along with a lot to come and hopefully hundreds if not thousands of jobs for animators and storytellers come to be. And as we continue to stand with animation, I think it's important that now more than ever we voice our wants to the studios. We let them know just how much animation along with these characters and stories and the jobs of all of the workers mean to us. And who knows, maybe one of these films could finally get taken off the shelf. But if not, that's okay too. I mean, after all, it could always be worse.
I am Steve.
Last summer, Ben Tennyson went on a road trip and came back with something out of this world.
Ben Tennyson's got to be Ben Tennyson again. It's your responsibility as a hero with a secret.
This weekend, don't miss the Ben 10 movie Race Against Time, only on Cartoon Network.